Hello, hello, hello. So, unfortunately, the nut, I don't know if it's nutcases or terrorists, maybe it's a bit of both, from Gaza are raining missiles. It's an absolute miracle. A miracle of miracles. There's been over 200 missiles sent and no Jewish deaths. Let me check my facts as we speak to make sure that I'm not making a mistake on that. I hope that is the case. Um, Thank God. So, we're talking about insanity of the highest dimension. And the question, of course, is what is the reason for this insanity? Why are these people throwing rockets? Why have they thrown thousands upon thousands of rockets? So, it's obviously that Islam does not want land. The entire notion that Islam is saying, well, we care about Palestinians is not true. Because apart from the fact that Jordan is basically 80% Palestinian, so it's a Palestinian land, um, Gaza would be probably 100% Palestinian. And yet, somehow, they're still throwing rockets. In fact, before Jews had the modern state of Israel, I have a great uncle whose father was murdered in Hebron in 1929. Was 20 years before Israel. In fact, Muhammad himself murdered 3 Jewish families in cold blood and raped their women. So Islam is evil. It's just that simple. And a lot of people will say, oh, how can you say that? There are 2 reasons people would say that. The first is that they may be genuinely sweet people and they can't fathom that other people are evil. But if I said, well, Hitler was evil, right? Oh yeah, Hitler is different. Well, then do me a favor, go to a website. It's called thereligionofpeace.com. Thereligionofpeace.com. It documents those that we know about, never mind those that we don't know about, how many murders were committed by Islamists since 9/11. Now, I'm just going to check this out as I speak to you. Religionofpeace.com. Let's see here. Religion of Peace. The religion. I spelled it wrong. The religion of peace.com. Alright, so, it's just too sad for words. On this very day, today, November 12th, November 12th, 2016, 52 people were murdered in Karachi, Pakistan. You have no idea what's going on in Pakistan. These things don't even hit our news. But here's a Jihad report, November 02, 2009 to November 08. So that's literally going back for November 12th. It's going back 4 days, right? Within from 2 to 8. So that's in 6 days. There were 26 attacks, 151 people murdered, 167 people injured, no suicide blasts in 13 countries. Now, what about just in the month of October, right? There were 128 attacks, 545 people killed, 472 people injured, suicide blasts 6, countries 22. Now, just this year, 2019, let's check this out. There were 1,525 Islamic attacks in 49 countries, in which 8,413 people were killed and 9,372 injured. Right? Now, if you just go year after year after year, it's the same carnage and evil. And so, what people have to realize about Islam is Islam has 2 versions, as the as he wrote a book. It's called The Son of Hamas, and he basically, his father is the military commander of Hamas, and he converted to Christianity. Thank God he got himself out of that insanity. And listen to this. He says the simplest truth about Islam, and that is that there's 2 stages to Islam. The first stage of Islam is kind of the innocuous stage. It's a stage in which people know, and you ask any Muslim, they'll all say the same thing. What is Islam? So Islam is, I think it's called the Shahada, that there's one God and Muhammad is his prophet. Beautiful. What is Islam? Okay, you have to try to go to Hajj once in your lifetime. Let's go around this rock in Saudi Arabia. There is Zakah. That's actually not a bad thing. I got to give them that. 2.5% of your money to charity, of course. I hope that doesn't include killing people. There is, I don't know exactly, but like praying 5 times a day. Maybe one other thing. So it all sounds all quite nice. But there's just one little problem. There's a 6th thing. Now this 6th thing depends. It depends if it's the time to do it. It depends if the imam is calling to do it. But it's definitely the highest goal of Islam. And that is jihad. Now, what is jihad? Now let me read you verses from the Quran that tell you clearly what to do. 109 verses that speak of war with non-believers. Okay. So, Quran 2:244. Then fight in the cause of Allah, and know that Allah heareth and knoweth all things. Quran 2:216. Fighting is prescribed for you, and ye dislike it. But it's possible that ye dislike a thing which is good for you, that ye love a thing which is bad for you. But Allah knoweth, and ye know not. In other words, he's saying, go ahead and kill. Now you might think that killing is bad, but no, Allah knows that killing is good. Quran 3:56. As to those who reject faith, I will punish them with terrible agony in this world and the hereafter, nor will they have anyone to help. You see, he is saying to them, if you do jihad, you get heaven. And that's why all these nuts, I shouldn't say nuts, because if we were brought up in the same crazy idea, we would probably be the same thing. But they believe they do jihad, they go straight to heaven. Quran 3:151. Soon shall we cast terror into the hearts of the unbelievers, for they joined companions with Allah, for which he had sent no authority. Okay, so unbelievers here speaking about Christians. Quran 4:74. Let those who fight in the way of Allah, who sell the life of this world for the other, whoso fighteth in the way of Allah, be he slain or be he victorious, on him we shall bestow a vast reward. In other words, if you're going to fight for Allah, you will get a great reward. Quran 4:76. Those who believe fight in the cause of Allah, and those who disbelieve fight in the cause of the Satan. So you fight against the friends of Satan. Alright, we're doing great here. Quran 49. But they but wish that ye should reject faith as they do, and thus be on the same footing as they, but take not friends from their ranks until they flee in the way of Allah. But if they turn renegades, seize them and slay them. Listen, this is what they believe the prophet of God, the only prophet that his writings are intact and real, tells them to do. Slay them wherever you find them. And take no friends or helpers from their ranks. So not only do you have to slay them, don't be their friend. There is literally another 100 verses on the same thing. And if Muslims will tell you, well, By the way, there's also this verse that of tolerance. Well, that was in the beginning when he wanted to get Christians and Jews on his cause, but when he saw that they weren't going to follow him, what did he do? He turned viciously against them. So in other words, you can't blame, people might take this wrong, but you cannot blame ISIS and these terrorists for murdering because they think that God is telling them to murder. They see the world in a very simple way. They see it, you're either a Muslim, which is a believer, or you're a kafir. Now, kafir, there's a Hebrew word which is the same word as kafir. It means a heretic, means a non-believer. So, you see, Muhammad had a problem, and his problem was that he innovated, according to him, the idea of one God, but the people that knew about it rejected him. So what did he do? So he says, well, you're not a believer. So the problem is that Islam says either, and this is a famous thing from Islam, it's called the house of war, the house of peace. If a country follows Sharia law, that country, officially, it's the house of peace, even though we see how much they're killing each other, unfortunately. But if a country doesn't follow Sharia law, you may never, ever, ever have peace with it. The most you can have is a false peace treaty, which is why Obama, who understood Islam, his father is Muslim, and according to Islam, that makes you Islam, and he was raised in a Muslim country, and he understood it very well. So it's called a hunda. You're never allowed to have peace with a Western country. You could only have a temporary ceasefire. That's why every single time Gaza starts to lose, what do? They do a ceasefire, and then they break it again, because in their eyes, we are descendants of apes and pigs. We're evil. We're from the Satan. So, just like Hitler convinced the Nazis that the Jews are vermin and killing them is a good idea, Muhammad did this 1400 years ago. And this is continuing. This is, now obviously, we should never ever group all people. Based on the statistics, you have 700 million Muslims which are called Salafists, which are traditional. It's the traditional Islam, it's the Quran which is violent. Islam itself is not necessarily violent. There are many, many people serving in the American army that are kind of good Muslims, but they are not following the Quran per se. They're following what's called the Hadith. They're following what is the explanation of Islam that came after. We live in a very free society. It used to be that the Pope, the bishop, the cardinal, the lahavdil, the rabbi, the pastor, they told people what to think. People were illiterate. They didn't know what to think. So whatever they said was true. It was the word of God. However, in fact, that's what Martin Luther, notwithstanding some of his violent anti-Semitism, was against, that there were these Catholic priests that were going around giving dispensations, that if you give me money, then you can sin. So, all things considered, people didn't know anything. But now people can read. Everything's on the internet. So they're reading it themselves. The last words, this again is from Islam. It's not from our sources. We don't know anything. We only have this from their sources. I'm going to find this. What was the last hadith, which is last will hadith of Muhammad? If this doesn't curdle your blood, then maybe you don't have blood. Let's see here. Last hadith from Muhammad. Let's see here. Islam, are you? No, I'm looking for what was Muhammad's final words. Last words of Muhammad. Let's see. Let's see here. Okay. I want the sanitized version. I want the... Aha! Here we go. Last words of Muhammad. Muhammad cursed Jews on his deathbed. Volume 2, Book 23, number 414. Again, this is Islam's words, narrated Urwa. Aisha said, now Aisha was his wife. A lot of what we have in the hadiths, which are about what Muhammad said, comes from Aisha. Aisha was 6 years old when her father gave her, she came with her dolls into Muhammad's house, and he, let's call it, consummated, or what we would call statutory rape, at 9 years old, which is why Islam believes 9 years old is an appropriate time to marry, what is that, a third grader? The Prophet in his fatal illness said, Allah cursed the Jews and the Christians because they took graves of their prophets as places for praying. Aisha added, had it not been for that the grave of the Prophet would have been made prominent, but I'm afraid it might be taken as a place for praying. Muhammad cursed Christians on his deathbed. Volume 2, Book 23, number 472, narrated Aisha. Allah's apostle in his fatal illness said, Allah cursed the Jews and the Christians, for they built the places of the worship at the graves of the prophets. Okay. In other words, he was afraid that, people were afraid that his grave not be taken as a place for worship. Let me see here. Anyway, I don't see what I was looking for, but the bottom line is that somewhere it says, and many Muslims believe, that he says to kill Jews, unfortunately. So, the bottom line is that if you were brought up and you believe there's one man who has the word of God and he tells you to murder, the chances are the vast majority of people would murder. And therefore, the only way to deal with Islam is to, on one hand, engage it, because there are normal Muslims, and on the other hand, to destroy the evil, which is nothing less than the desire to murder everyone. And that's the good Islam. That's the Salafist. That's the 700 million. Now again, there are Muslims that are not murderers, so we should never hate. But the Shiites, obviously the radical Shiites, which is why they're pursuing a nuclear bomb, they believe that when the world will be filled to blood, as when the horses, up to a horse's knee, then the Messiah will come. And so, all things considered, my suggestion is that unless we want to, God forbid, bury our heads in the sand to get it, I want to say, we must wake up and deal with the simple fact, which is that just because our religions say we don't murder doesn't mean there isn't a religion born in a desert 1,400 years ago, which told its followers and has never, ever, ever ended a bloodbath.